Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to talk about everything regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs on day one of the entry draft, from the trade that they made to move out of the first round to all the rumors that we'll need to keep up with over the next week or so. The timing on this trade was a little bit unfortunate, but when I did see it, it was a welcome sight. At this point, we were about 3 hours into the first round, and the Maple Leafs were 2 picks away from being on the clock. And at that point, you're looking at the best players available, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, the Leafs could pick this guy, they could pick that guy. And then you get the Frank Saravalli tweet notification saying that the Maple Leafs have traded Peter Mrazek, but it involves pick number 25 in exchange for pick number 38. So you sat there watching the draft for 3 hours, and the Maple Leafs aren't even going to make a selection until tomorrow. But they get out of the final 2 years of Peter Mrazek's contract, so they free up $3.8 million this season and next year, and all it cost them to do that was moving 13 spots back in the draft. While I'm perfectly okay with paying that price to move on from Mrazek because it does free up $3.8 million in cap space this year and next season as well, I'm not just going to sit here and say that it was a great trade, because I don't know how much credit I really want to give Dubas for just cleaning up the mess that he made a year ago and getting out from a bad signing that he made. But at the same time, everyone makes mistakes, and hindsight is hindsight, right? He made a number of other free agent signings last year that worked out tremendously. Guys like Michael Bunting and David Kampf and Anze Kasha were phenomenal for the Maple Leafs last year. Even if you want to look back at the Nick Ritchie trade, yes, the Maple Leafs gave the Coyotes a second or a third round pick, but they also got back Ilya Lyubushkin, who's a guy that you would have spent a second or a third round pick on at the deadline anyway. So even that trade wasn't that bad. Earlier in the day, someone asked me on Twitter about trading down, and I said trading down only makes sense if the player you wanted is no longer there, or still will be there whenever you can trade down to. And I give an example. In 2018, when the Maple Leafs drafted Rasmus Sandin, they originally had the 25th overall pick, but they felt that he would be there a little bit later on, so they dropped back to the 29th overall pick, they picked up an extra third round pick, and they still got the guy that they wanted. In this scenario where the Maple Leafs traded back from 25th to 38, it's a bit more of a swing than just 25 to 29, but the Maple Leafs only did that because the player that they wanted at 25 was no longer there. So they made the decision to then use the 25th overall pick to move on from Peter Mrazek and get the next best guy on their list, and they obviously feel that he'll still be there at 38th overall. If the Leafs felt that they could get the next best player on their list at 38, and they didn't have the guy that the Blackhawks drafted 25th overall on their list, and that guy turns out to be really good, well then they wouldn't have picked him anyway, right? That's just how the draft works. The entire thing is the power of hindsight. If you go back 10 or 15 years, there's guys that are in the Hockey Hall of Fame who are drafted in the 5th or 6th round, Everyone passed on him multiple times. That's just what the draft is. It's a big giant game of, should have drafted that guy. And there still are really good players left in the draft that the Maple Leafs could pick at 38th overall. And if you're interested in reading about them, I'll leave an article from theleafsnation.com linked in the description of the video. And after the Leafs traded away Peter Mrazek, Kyle Dubas went on to say that they now have enough cap space to take a run at any available goaltender, and that includes pending UFA Jack Campbell, who Dubas plans to meet with in the coming days. Dubas also said that at this point, he's comfortable with Joseph Woll and Eric Källgren battling it out for the backup position, that the focus would be on finding the best possible goalie that they can get, so the best starting goalie. And I think some people overreacted to this because they took it as him saying, oh, we're just going to sign one good goalie and then throw whoever else we got in at the backup position, and that's not necessarily what he meant. There's just other spots on the roster that take precedence over the backup goaltending position. In the end, it's about taking the money that you got and spreading it out the best that you can. If they can find someone who's better than Källgren and Joseph Woll that fits in their budget, I'm sure they'll sign them. And if the last couple of years have taught us anything, it's how important having at least a serviceable backup goalie is. So I don't think it's a position that he'll neglect. It's just, at this point, they got some other things to worry about, and then they'll circle back to it. In the previous video, we discussed Marc-Andre Fleury as the possible option for the Maple Leafs in net. And the way that Pierre LeBrun was talking throughout the day and even on the radio, he made it sound like if Marc-Andre Fleury wasn't re-signing with the Minnesota Wild, which he ended up doing, the next team on his list would have been the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had actually waived his no-trade clause for Toronto at the trade deadline last year. It was just that Chicago wanted Matthew Knies in the trade, and Kyle Dubas said no to that. Then there were some rumors from earlier in the day where the Maple Leafs apparently had some interest in acquiring goaltender Matt Murray. But the problem with Matt Murray is that he makes $6.25 million for the next 2 years. And then this leads us down a rabbit hole of hypotheticals where there was a trade in place that would have sent Murray from Ottawa to Buffalo with salary retained. So maybe the Maple Leafs could have gotten in on a 3-way deal and there would have been double salary retention. But Matt Murray nixed the deal from Ottawa to Buffalo in the first place, so I can't see the Maple Leafs acquiring him via trade. The more likely scenario is that the Senators just buy out Matt Murray because over the course of the buyout, it would save them $5 million in actual cash. And after acquiring Alex DeBrincat, it sounds like the Senators also want to try to sign Claude Giroux, so they're going to need all the money that they can get. If the Senators were to buy him out and he would be willing to sign a 1-year deal worth around $1 million or $1.25 million, as a backup goalie, I guess he would be an option for the Maple Leafs, but not my favorite one, not my most preferred one, because it's not just the poor play, but he's also dealt with a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, and midway through last season, he was even sent down to the American Hockey League. But to his credit, after he was recalled, he posted a .912 save percentage in 14 games. Like I said, in terms of backup goalies, he's not necessarily number one on my list, but he is a guy who I could see benefiting from a change of scenery, and he did play well towards the end of last year. After the Colorado Avalanche acquired Alexander Giorgiov in a trade from the New York Rangers, it was reported from multiple different insiders that Darcy Kuemper would hit the open market next week and be a free agent, and they also added that the Colorado Avalanche just couldn't afford to pay him what he's asking. And what he's asking is a similar contract to what Philip Grubauer got in free agency last year, which is about $6 million per for 6 seasons. Now, it's not that At the Fourth Period on Twitter is not a credible source. I just haven't seen any of the other insiders linking Darcy Kuemper to the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they did and I just missed it, then my apologies. If we're taking a look at his numbers with the Colorado Avalanche from this past season, they were good. If you look at his numbers from past years with the Arizona Coyotes, they were also good. He's had some injury problems in his career, and that would worry me. Also, the fact that he's 32, that would worry me as well. I mean, it's a 6-year deal for $6 million per. It's hypothetical in this scenario, but those aren't the things that would worry me the most. If you remember the list of injuries that the Avalanche had after they won the Stanley Cup, you'd know that he suffered an eye injury that he needed to see a specialist for daily just to maintain his vision. And there was a goalie by the name of Carter Hutton a couple of years ago who had a really good year with the St. Louis Blues and then signed a deal for like $3.5 million in 3 years with the Buffalo Sabres and then was awful. And at the end of that contract, you come to find out that he had vision problems. You know, seeing the puck is important. I don't know if this is a problem that's just done and over with for Darcy Kuemper. Like, he's perfectly fine. He can see again. Or it's a problem that's going to plague him for the rest of his career. I don't know, man. Seeing the puck is pretty important. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about here is that it sounds like the Blackhawks are not going to extend a qualifying offer to restricted free agent Dylan Strome, which would make him a free agent next week. You can just sign him. Dylan Strome, of course, being from Mississauga and having played in the OHL, he's a pretty big Maple Leafs fan. He's also a Jays fan as well. That picture was of him at a game, I believe, like last week or something like that. He's 25 years old. He's 6'3". He's 200 pounds. He plays center, and he's a former 3rd overall pick. Now, if you remember back to the beginning of last year, the Blackhawks, I believe, made a coaching change, and the new coach just didn't really like Dylan Strome for whatever reason. They weren't really playing him a whole ton, and they were even benching him for some games. And then as the season went along, they started playing him a little bit more, and as he got more regular ice time into the new year, he actually finished the season with 40 points in 46 games. Now, that was also primarily playing with Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, 2 extremely talented offensive players, but it's good to see that he was playing center at least. The Blackhawks traded DeBrincat, Kirby Dach. They're not extending a qualifying offer to Dylan Strome. They're not extending a qualifying offer to Dominik Kubalik. They took on Peter Mrazek. I guess they're just going for Connor Bedard, but at the same time, I don't know, Dylan Strome's a good player. You wouldn't want to try to get something in return for him? The 25-year-old, 6'3", 200-pound centerman who put up 40 points in the final 46 regular season games for you is not worth a qualifying offer of $3.6 million? I don't really understand it. But if they're just going to let him walk to free agency for nothing, I mean, if there's mutual interest between him and the Maple Leafs, I'd like to have him. Like we said, he's 25 years old. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. He plays the center ice position. Who wouldn't want that? He's got decent underlying numbers. He put up 40 points in the final 46 regular season games last year. Sure, we'll take him. But I'm not going to go too in-depth on that, because if it actually happens, then we'll do an entire video on it, and we'll go through all the nitty-gritty details and everything that we need to know. And I also don't want to make this video any longer than what it needs to be. So like I said earlier in the video, if you're interested in seeing who the Maple Leafs could select at 38th overall, I will leave that article from theleafsnation.com linked in the description of the video. They're very talented, very smart people over there. Trust me, it'll be a great read if you're curious to see who would be available for the Maple Leafs there. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Make sure to like it if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you in the next one.